Alright, YouTube, all this talk about progress, and yet what does the DEA decide to do? Keep marijuana on Schedule 1. You see, the DEA believes, apparently in contradiction to half the medical studies performed in the last 30 years, that marijuana has no generally recognized medical benefits. Now, shake your head for a moment and just ponder this strange thing that just happened. When did tobacco have a medical usage? When did alcohol have a medical usage? Oh, that's right. Oh, they don't. You see, they're still legal as long as you're of age and willing to pay a hefty tax. More so on tobacco than alcohol, probably because it fucks your lungs up. You see, the DEA's classification scheme does not simply rely upon, oh, is it medically beneficial or does it have no safe and proven medical benefits? It's also based on, is it addictive or not, and is it particularly harmful or not? If you become addicted to something that's not doing you any harm, probably not as big a problem as if both are the case. You know, oh, it's, yeah, you take it once and you want it for the rest of your life and it just completely screws your body up. Oh, you know, like, oh, you know, some of the opiates that they hand out like candy to people when they get minor surgery. See, those are the real problem in this country. Marijuana is not addictive in the chemical sense. It is habituating. That is, it is a far lesser degree of dependency that is created, generally speaking, with marijuana, unless somebody is like, if they're dabbing or they're using pure, like, extracted cannabinoids or something like that, that I can see would become a problem. Much more potent, much more concentrated. It's like the difference between a person who is chewing a salvia quid and somebody who completely absolves their mind of all existence for 10-15 minutes by taking like 100 times salvinorin extract and smoking that. A little bit of a difference there. Or the difference between somebody takes a tab of acid versus they take a whole vial with like 500 doses of LSD in it and they dump it in their eyeballs, they drink some of it, they snort some of it up their nose, inject the rest in their ass, and something like that. There's a big difference between those various situations. I know, getting a little bit off topic there, but you understand the similarities and the differences here. As far as marijuana goes, the addiction is simply not there. The fact that it is habituating, it has in common with tobacco, but unlike tobacco, which the acetylcholine receptors get fucked up by nicotine, which is taken up in place of acetylcholine, reduces stress. Over time, the body produces less acetylcholine. The person becomes chemically dependent upon nicotine to feel normal from that point on. That becomes a problem. That doesn't happen with marijuana. As far as harm goes, it has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt at this point by medical science. No, if you are smoking weed, you're not dabbing, you're not taking some synthetic substitute that happens to be a cannabinoid receptor agonist or whatever, you're not taking pure THC and smoking it out of a bong, you are smoking marijuana, whether it's a high grade like it's hydro, sensimilla, no seeds, no stems, just dripping from its trichomes, or brickweed, regardless of which you're smoking. By the time, if you were to sit there and continuously smoke it as fast as you could, you'd green out and start puking maybe, but ultimately it probably wouldn't do any significant long-term harm. Cigarettes would. You smoke a couple packs of those, you've done a lot more harm than you're going to do with marijuana. I like it when people say, oh, there's more tar in pot smoke. Number one, I haven't seen a study proving that, but I'll just humor you. Number two, people typically smoke a lot less marijuana in the same period of time that they would be smoking tobacco. So there are people who smoke 4 or 5 packs of tobacco a day. I personally find the idea, I'm like, whoa, how can you possibly do this? How are you still able to speak? Why isn't your throat just swollen up like a dried out old radish left out in the sun, all corky and shit? I don't quite understand it, but that's the counterpart to who smokes that much marijuana. I'm sure maybe Bob Marley did, maybe Snoop Dogg does, I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me though, the average user, they can't even afford that much marijuana. Yeah, man, I'm so addicted to weed, I've got a $500 a day habit, and I'm smoking the cheapest 5 a gram brick that I could find. It just doesn't happen that way. The DEA doesn't know what it's talking about. It's using a scapegoat for the public mentality is being manipulated right now. They're acting as though it is medical benefit or the lack thereof that is the sole determinant of which schedule marijuana remains on. But it's not. That's not how the drug scheduling system works. It's just a cop-out. They're manipulating everybody because they don't want to admit to the other two parts of it. It is not substantially addictive. Habituating, yes. That is, and stoners often forget that. There's a difference between the two, and it is habituating. It is. And number two, it is not substantially harmful when used in regularly acquired and used doses. Therefore, it shouldn't be on Schedule 1. You've got opioid painkillers that are highly addictive, extremely toxic, and really, their medical benefits, okay, you're too high to care about the fact that you're in pain, okay, that's great, are perhaps more limited than marijuana in the pain relief aspect, certainly in the aspect of relieving the nausea associated with certain surgical procedures, cancer treatment, and so forth. Glaucoma would be another one. I don't say that marijuana cures cancer. I don't believe, cannabis oil cured cancer. It can prevent seizures, can help with that with epilepsy. It can completely stop all epilepsy in certain patients, or at least reduce it. It can cure glaucoma. It can. It can help with nausea, certainly. Get people's appetite up. Keep them eating so that they can go through chemo or other treatments, some of the other draconian treatments we have to give people sometimes for significant conditions. Sometimes one of the things that happens as a byproduct of their treatment is they lose their appetite. They start withering away. This doesn't help them to prosper as they go through this treatment. You lower the death rate if you can keep them eating. You can keep them from puking their guts out after they eat, and you can keep them feeling less pain overall and maybe more hope, generally speaking. They will survive at higher levels. These are all perfectly acceptable medical applications for marijuana that are already being used in some parts of this country alone, let alone many other countries that have already legalized it medically. We've already got medical marijuana being dispensed around this country. Here in Vermont, we have medical marijuana. It is recognized by the state government of Vermont as having medical benefits. What gives the DEA, as a federal bureau, the agency to lord over the states with utter disregard for the 10th Amendment, I might add, to determine what consenting adults can and cannot federally put in their bodies as a form of medicine, as opposed to the states, which have, in some cases, already determined, yes, this material is medicinal. No, it is not a public health crisis. We do have drugs that are a public health crisis. Most of them are otherwise legal. Prescription painkillers are the biggest public health crisis that we as a nation right now face. It is worse than crack. It is worse than methamphetamine. It is worse than heroin. That's the real problem. And unfortunately, many of those pill poppers that get prescribed, here's some Vicodin, here's some Percocet, here's Oxys. They get prescribed some painkiller, and they're told it's perfectly safe, just use it as prescribed, and everything will be just fine. They get addicted to it. They go out of their way to find more because they've become addicted to it. And if the supply runs out, they will turn to heroin sometimes, or they'll turn to other drugs. They're not turning to marijuana, although ultimately, if they were to start smoking pot, even though they would still get the same federal drug charges apparently as if they were shooting up heroin, they probably wouldn't be addicted to marijuana now, would they? Oh, they'd get habituated because their pain would become chronic after a while. But at the same time, I would much rather see them smoking and toking like some old 60s era hippie dude with a long beard and unwashed dreadlocks than to see them popping pills and withering away in an alley forgotten by the government. And the DEA is completely wrong. It is objectively wrong on multiple counts. It is wrong ethically when it makes such a decision. It is wrong scientifically. It is flying in the face of all common sense, all scientific studies, all medical applications that are accepted by numerous states and by numerous health agencies and by numerous accredited health professionals, as well as the governments of foreign states, when it makes such a decision. The DEA is completely and utterly wrong. And keep in mind, this is Obama's DEA. He could lean on them as the chief executive and say, drop it by a scheduling level. Let's just get it out there medically. Let people smoke their weed. I don't care if some little old granny with cancer is smoking. I don't care if the AIDS patient is smoking. I don't care if the doctors roll and smoke their own in the hospital. As long as people are all right and we're not... here's the same president. Here's the kicker. This is the same president who talks about climate change. He says the science is completely solved. If you disagree, you're a horrible, ignorant bigot. And yet he's not willing to trust those same scientists, those same professionals, when they say, yeah, marijuana, it's like the least of your worries. You've already got legal tobacco. Plenty of people, hundreds of thousands of people die from the effects of smoking that every year. Hundreds of thousands of people keel over or get into a car accident because they're drinking and driving or because they drank too much and their liver quit on them. These substances are legal. They're perfectly fine to manufacture. I can get tobacco seeds and grow a whole crop of tobacco anytime that I want. I can cure it, and I can sit there and load my pipe with that cured tobacco over and over until I fall into a fucking coma. I can extract the nicotine, plaster myself in it, and die anytime that I want to. I can set up a still, and I can make my own wine. I can make some beer. I can chug it, get totally blackout drunk, puke all over myself anytime I want. But if I wanted to roll a J, the federal government has a problem with that. Most people who are smoking marijuana are doing it very, very seldom compared to the idea that some people have concocted in their minds of the immortal stoner as somebody who carries around a backpack literally packed with weed, and all they do from the moment they get up to the moment they go to sleep is toke. It just doesn't happen that way. It's too expensive, for one thing, for the average person. Some in the middle class go bankrupt trying to fund such a habit. It just doesn't happen. And it just doesn't make sense either for economic reasons. I don't support taxing and regulating weed. I support just decriminalizing it and leave it at that. Simple possession, no charge, no fine, no anything. DUI still applies, public intoxication, disorderly conduct, those still apply. Otherwise, let people grow a few plants, let them smoke their weed. Who gives a shit? Don't even need to hand it over to the government and the pharmaceutical companies. Yes, it's medicinal. It has pain relief applications, and at worst, it's going to get them habituated to its use. It's going to be a lot easier for them to wean themselves off it. And if they don't, then what? There are millions of people in this country who smoke it every day. Most of them function just fine. Okay, it slowed them down a little bit with age. They're going to slow down anyway. I'd much rather see them slow down and be happy and be a stoner. Yes, stoners can be annoying sometimes too. I understand that. I was never part of the stoner culture. I comprehend that idea. But aren't they a little bit less annoying than Harold the Happy Hippie after he's been thrown in jail for a couple years and he got to share a cell with, Manny the Axe Murderer, and now he knows how to kill people and break into homes and hack computers, and he's got several hepatitis-inducing tattoos. He's probably been sodomized a few times. I'd think that it's better to just leave him as a hippie. I think he was better off before he went into the prison system. And I think it was a lot cheaper to leave him outside of the prison system. Okay, put him in the drunk tank if he's publicly intoxicated on a copious amount of marijuana. We let people grow opium poppies because they use them to garnish their breads and their bagels and stuff. We literally have no law against him growing a small number of opium poppies. Now, those same poppies, if these people decide to extract the sort of milky sap from those pods, they can take those opium tears, process them a little, get some laudanum out of it. That'd be great. Or they can process it more and they can get some heroin or something like that, or make all sorts of good stuff. They can completely die. They can also take the dried pods, boil them up, make a soup out of it, drink that, and be completely out of their mind wasted. Even worse than laudanum will get them. So that's fine. That has medical benefits and isn't a public health hazard. But some dude smoking a joint is. I don't agree with the DEA on that one. I see one thing that I have a real problem with. Some of the alt-right or whatever. Some of them are still stuck on the mud degeneracy stuff as far as drugs are concerned. Let's use pragmatism to govern such actions. If you're not a libertarian, you don't care about the constitutional argument, which is the federal government's not given power to overrule the states on the issue. Okay, let's ignore that for a second. I consider it important. I understand many people in this country, for some reason, they don't like parts of the Constitution. Okay, Democrats don't like the Second Amendment. Republicans don't like the inverted meaning of the First Amendment. The alt-right really doesn't like the right to privacy in some cases. Okay, whatever. What about pragmatism? Look at how much it costs and what the results are of the drug war. It got no results. It didn't stop any addiction. We just keep throwing money at it and expecting it to magically get better. The DEA is on the forefront of those failed laws. Just abolish it altogether. If they can't get their act together, if they can't properly schedule these substances according to actual, objective, documented proof, as opposed to a bunch of moral quandaries posed by people almost a century ago, if it can't ignore those things from the moralist period and look at modern science and look at the applications of many of these mind-altering substances within a medicinal context and drop them to at least a slightly lower schedule so they can be used for medical purposes, then we should abolish the DEA altogether, eliminate all federal drug laws, and return it completely to the states. Let them take care of it. Let states and municipalities decide for themselves. Our state already has. Weed is decriminalized here. People can smoke it more or less openly on their own property. And guess what? There's no public health crisis from it. It's been decriminalized for a couple of years now. I don't see any increase in its usage. Its price hasn't dropped, unfortunately, for the stoners as well. The public health crisis we do have, perfectly legal opiates, painkillers. By the truckload they come into this state. People are in a daze. You can see them. You roll on down the road, take a drive. You'll see people that you can tell are high. They're not high on crack. They're not high on meth. They're high on heroin or they're high on painkillers. And if they're using heroin, they were using painkillers first, 9 times out of 10. I have met people, personally, in my personal life, who have had this problem. I've met people who have been stricken by this epidemic of painkiller usage. But I've also met plenty of people who smoke marijuana, again, decriminalized in this state. They all seem productive to me. They don't seem to have a problem with it. Okay, they got sleepy. They ate a Twinkie. So what? Is it really the government's business? And does throwing $100 billion a year or whatever we throw at it, is that a pragmatic solution? Because it doesn't seem to be working. Fuck the DEA. Get rid of it altogether if they can't get their act together. If they're not going to rule by science, then they shouldn't have any decision-making power at all in the first place. That's about all. Peace out.